Okay, moving on to the next segment of today's show. A lot of people have been asking me, Zach, talk about the NFC West. Right now, who do you think is the best team in this NFC West? And throughout the season, I've differed. I've changed my opinion on this. You guys know I actually predicted the Seattle Seahawks to win the Super Bowl before the season started, and I've been very high on the Arizona Cardinals the whole way. But I got to be honest with you. When I look at both of those teams right now, they don't look like that good of football teams to me. And it's crazy. I get it, because you're going to say, Zach, how can you have watched the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday against the Buffalo Bills and not feel at least somewhat good about their performance? And same thing about Seattle, even though they've obviously really been struggling over their last couple games. With Arizona, I'll say this. I think Cliff Kingsbury deserves credit for how much the team has improved this season, but I got to be honest with you. The more and more I watch the Arizona Cardinals, they just scream pretender to me. If you were going to ask me right now, Zach, are the Arizona Cardinals a playoff team? Of course they are. They're in first place in the NFC West, and the fact that they're just going to make the playoffs this season, Cliff Kingsbury does deserve a lot of credit for that. But at the same time, if you've watched the Arizona Cardinals closely over the last 2 or 3 weeks, especially the last 2 games against Buffalo, which somehow, some way they won yesterday, and then against the Miami Dolphins, where at home, close game against a team I think you're better than, I really do believe that was a game the Arizona Cardinals should have won, and unfortunately they didn't. So Arizona now, even though they beat Buffalo yesterday, I thought they got pretty lucky. And Cliff Kingsbury, again, does not know how to call plays on 4th and 1, and I do think that Kyler Murray and how well he's played has kind of been shielding us to just how bad the Cardinals' coaching and play calling is, especially in late-game situations. Cliff Kingsbury deserves credit for the offense he's installed, and I do think he's been a better coach than advertised so far during his tenure as Cardinals head coach. It's just the matter of fact that Arizona and their head coach are kind of screwing up the easy things. And by easy, I don't mean they're actually easy. I just mean easier things to do when you're an NFL coach. Things like clock management. Things like telling your quarterback and the rest of your team what to do in specific situations. And really just play calling, man. How many times over the last 2 weeks have the Cardinals just had a big opportunity to put the game away and shut down their opponent, and the bottom line is they just haven't been able to keep their foot on the gas, and I do think that has cost them in some of the games this season, really the last 2 weeks. Also, Arizona has lost a home game to the Detroit Lions. They also lost a road game to the Carolina Panthers. If you're a legitimate contender, I think the Arizona Cardinals win those games. So even though Kyler Murray deserves a lot of credit, he is one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league right now. What him and DeAndre Hopkins were able to do on Sunday was absolutely incredible. But at the same time, I don't consider Arizona to be a real contender in the NFC right now. There are just way too many flaws on this team and way too many signs I've seen recently. So then we go to Seattle. You guys know, I picked the Seahawks to win the Super Bowl before the season started. And I think recently, kind of similar to Arizona over the last couple weeks, their quarterback is just doing too much. The problem with Seattle is their quarterback has to do a lot, or else I don't think they have a shot to beat that many teams in the NFL when Russell Wilson doesn't play well. If you take Russell Wilson off the Seahawks, how many games do they win? Besides the quarterback position, what does Seattle do well? I like Pete Carroll. I tend to think he's one of the 5 best coaches in the league. But to be honest, Seattle's personnel development over the last couple of years really has not been good at all. And Russell Wilson has saved them from it. I understand everyone is going to talk about DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and how good of a job they've done with those guys. And I get it. Those 2 guys have been 2 picks they've really hit on. But is Seattle's running backs ever healthy? Apparently, Chris Carson is going to be playing on Thursday Night Football this week against the Arizona Cardinals. But let's just face facts. When you look at Seattle right now, they have a middle school defense. And I understand they played better against the Los Angeles Rams. They weren't terrible. And maybe that could be something they build on going forward with Jamal Adams back. But until I see them do that on a consistent basis, I don't think I could consider the Seattle Seahawks to be the best team in the NFC either. So for me, my best team right now in this NFC West is the Los Angeles Rams and Sean McVay. They're the most complete team in this division. And it's funny because going into the season, I, like many other people, were not that high on this LA Rams squad. I'll admit it. my reasoning was that they played in the NFC West, which was a really tough division, and last year they did lose a lot, and they finished 9-7, and I really didn't like the trade they made for Jalen Ramsey. I thought they gave up way too many draft picks in terms of their future, and I thought the Rams could be in a tough spot going forward in terms of a long rebuild, kind of like the Texans, because the Rams really don't have that many picks at all. They did finesse the Texans into getting Brandon Cooks for a second-round pick. That looks like to be a pretty good trade for the Rams right now. But going back to their defense, Sean McVay made a bold move this season when he decided not to bring back Wade Phillips as his defensive coordinator. And we know Wade Phillips has been a guy that's been coaching in this league for a very long time. He's very well respected. And that was a move that Sean McVay made that really did surprise a lot of people. He decided to bring in Brandon Staley, who worked for Vic Fangio in Denver and Chicago over the last couple seasons. And what he's done with this Rams defense has been absolutely phenomenal. Over the last couple of years, you kind of looked at the Rams defense and you said, all right, they had Aaron Donald, they had Jalen Ramsey, but there are so many holes on this team that I don't know if their quarterback play is good enough to get them over the hump. And the key with Jared Goff is this, and this was one of the main reasons why I actually picked the Los Angeles Rams to beat the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday, is that if you don't get pressure on him and you give him a somewhat decent running game, Jared Goff will win games for you at quarterback. I totally understand that this guy's a former number 1 overall pick, and he's been disappointing in some big games sometimes. You remember the Rams really could not do anything at all against the New England Patriots in that Super Bowl. The Miami Dolphin game a couple weeks ago, the Rams really outplayed Miami and still didn't win the game just because of Jared Goff and the way he was turning the ball over. But I do think Sean McVay does a really good job of simplifying the game for his quarterback and realizing that, hey, you don't need to do everything in order for us to win. Just play smart. Don't turn the ball over. We have a really good defense. We have a really good running game. And I think ultimately that defense could be the X factor that puts the Rams over the top. Because the Rams right now, I would say, are a top 5 defense in the NFL. And Seattle's is the worst defense in the NFL. And once again, Seattle's defense did play much better on Sunday than anyone could have ever expected. But still, their quarterback felt he had to do so much in order for his team to get the win that ultimately it just wasn't enough. I think the turnovers, that had a lot to do with the turnovers. That Russell Wilson kind of just said to himself, I have to do everything in order for my team to win games. And that's why he turned the ball over. He's having to do too much. Pete Carroll is asking him to do too much. But at the same time, you can't really blame Russ or Pete Carroll because they're right. The Seattle Seahawks, outside of quarterback, are just not a very good football team right now. And I do think ultimately that's what's separating them and the Los Angeles Rams. Now, the one thing the Seattle Seahawks do have going for them is their schedule. If you look at the upcoming schedule in the NFC for the Seattle Seahawks, it's not too tough at all. Right now, they're sitting at 6-3, and we know on Thursday night they have an absolutely massive game at home against the Arizona Cardinals, a team in their division that has already beaten them. I like Seattle to win that game. It's going to be one of the bigger games for both teams in a really long time. And then they go to Philly, host the Giants, host the Jets, go to Washington, host the Rams, and go to San Fran. In those 7 games, Seattle should finish at worst 6-1. And to be honest, I don't think they are. I think they lose to either Arizona at home or Philly on the road or at Washington or home against the Rams or even at San Francisco, because the bottom line is no matter how good Russell Wilson is, I don't know how you could watch the Seahawks and feel confident that they're beating any team, no matter how good their quarterback is, because what people have been saying, right, is that, oh yeah, Russell Wilson, he's really good, and the Seahawks have been leaning and relying on him really for the last 3 years since the Legion of Doom broke up, and he's been fine, and ultimately that's why a lot of people do like the Seattle Seahawks to still win this division. But my only thing is this, doesn't this year feel a little different in that aspect? Like, we know Russell Wilson has had to carry the Seahawks before, I get it, but this year, they have the worst defense in the league. I don't think it's close. They also have no healthy running backs. And once again, apparently Chris Carson is going to be starting and playing on Thursday night, but I don't trust him to get healthy until I see him on the field for a couple games in a row. And even then, when are Seattle's running backs ever healthy? DJ Dallas and Travis Homer and Marshawn Lynch is going to be here next thing you know. I don't trust Seattle's running backs to stay healthy. Also on Sunday against the Rams, Seattle's offensive line a unit that has been really a weakness on this team for the last 5 to 6 years. When is their offensive line going to improve? That's on Pete Carroll, and that's on drafting. And for me, that part of their team, I think, on Sunday against the Rams was exposed a little bit because the Rams defense just absolutely ate up Seattle's offensive line. And when you watch Seattle right now, for me, there are just way too many weaknesses for this team that I could put them in the championship conversation. Defense is very talented, but they are not good. They're going to need Jamal Adams to get healthy and play better. They're going to need Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright to get better. Because that's the thing about Seattle. Their defense is historically bad right now. I think right now I feel confident in saying that the Seattle Seahawks have the 32nd best defense in the NFL. If they could raise that number to like 20 to 22, I think that's what would ultimately put them in a position to be in the championship hunt, just because right now, as good as Russell Wilson is, I don't think you could rely on him as much as they are with that bad defense, bad running game, bad offensive line, and the Seahawks just look like a mess to me right now. Arizona, I still think they have the potential, just their defense hasn't been great the last couple weeks. And to be honest, once again, they're just doing a lot of things I see usually contenders do. Losing a home game to the Detroit Lions, not showing up to play on the road against the Carolina Panthers. Then on Sunday, they should have lost to the Buffalo Bills. And if Kyler doesn't complete that Hail Mary to Nuke, I think we're having a much different conversation about Cliff Kingsbury and the way he's coaching his team, just because the last 2 games, especially in the fourth quarter, his play calling has not been good. Very predictable on 4th and 1. You also saw 2 weeks ago in the game against Miami, his kicker missed a kick short, and he kicked it on 4th and 1. If I was Kingsbury, that was to tie the game, I probably would have just went for it, but that's ultimately the problem for Arizona. In short yardage situations, I feel like Cliff Kingsbury has to stop being cute and just give Kyler the ball. And for me, when you combine coaching and defense and offense, I'm going to say the Rams are the best team in the NFC West right now. They're the most talented team, and when you look at their balance as well, I really like it. Their defense, their quarterback, if you protect him, he could get the job done for you. And I've been really impressed with what this Los Angeles Rams team has been able to do over the last couple weeks. And right now, they are the best team to me in the NFC West. It's very unfortunate that Andrew Whitworth, their top left tackle, went down as well. And I do think in order for the Rams to succeed this season, they're going to have to get that taken care of. Obviously, losing a guy like that who's super important to your team, it sucks. But they have a tough Monday night game against Tampa Bay next week, and if they don't get that left tackle at least figured out a little bit, then they could be in trouble. So I'm curious to see what the Rams do exactly next week on Monday Night Football against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. To be honest, next week, looking at the schedule at first glance, I'm feeling Seattle is going to beat Arizona, and I'm feeling Tampa Bay is going to beat the Rams. But after that, everyone's going to be fooled. Everyone's going to be, oh yeah, see, told you, Seattle is the best team in the NFC West. I still don't trust their defense. They always win home games. I expect them to win Thursday against Arizona. And the Rams, without Whitworth on Monday Night Football next week, it's a tough spot, but we'll get to it on next week's show. The bottom line is, though, the NFC West is stupid good.